Hi, my name is Yin Gao and welcome to Dr. Gao's classroom. I'm a professional philosopher and I love classic Chinese poetry. I have been translating classical Chinese poetry for the last several years and I would love to share my knowledge on the subject with you. Your enjoyment is my command. So today I'm going to talk about one of the great Tang Dynasty poet, Li Bai, or Li Po as he is known in the English literature. Li Bai's status in Chinese literature is like that of Shakespeare in English literature. There are up to 6 poems in the Chinese textbook at primary school level and a few more in high school level textbook. Every school student is expected to memorize some of Li Bai's poems. So his influence in Chinese poetry and other forms of Chinese literature are so huge that it is impossible to imagine what it would be like without his poetry. Poets after him would write poetry, rhyming his poems, mimicking his style, or rewrite his poem in different formats. They quote him without even the need to make a reference. His poetry simply become part of the Chinese language itself. Because there are so much to talk about Li Bai, I'm going to do 2 videos on his poetry and several more on related subjects to Li Bai. So in my next video, I'm going to talk about one of his poems praising a young warrior. So if you're interested in Li Bai or his poetry, please subscribe my channel. And I'm also offering one-to-one lesson on classical Chinese poetry, philosophy, and medical texts. So if you're interested in reading this original Chinese text, please contact me. I listed my email below. Otherwise, just enjoy my video. Now, I'm going to read one of the poems in the textbook. Let me just read it now. 床前明月光，疑是地上霜。举头望明月，低头思故乡。Let me read it line by line. 床前明月光。床 can be translated either as bed or reeling around a well. And 前 is in front, and 明 is bright. 月 is moon, 光 is light. 疑是地上霜，疑 is wonder or suspect, and 是 is, and 地上 is a ground, and 霜 is frost. So if you translate the couplet, it reads, in front of the rail of a well, a pool of moonlight. I wonder if it's frost aground. So I needed to make a note about my translation of the 床, because 床 can be either translated as bed or railings around a well. Well, although many people translate the word as bed because it means bed in modern Chinese, I suggest it make more sense to translate as the railing around a well. This is because the textual context of the poem, because this line is followed by the line depicting the picture of a moonlight reflected on the ground, it makes more sense to translate it as the railings of a well. This is because in the Tang Dynasty, there were no glass like what we would have today on their windows. So the window were often covered by either paper or silk, depending on how much money they have. This means the moonlight might not be as bright inside the room as it would be outside. So I suggest the poet was in the courtyard where there was a well with railings around it. So the moonlight shining on the ground like a frost. So the next couplet reads, 举头望明月，低头思故乡. So 举 is raise, 头 is head, 望 is look, and Ming, as we saw before, it's bright. 月 again is moon. And 低头思故乡. 低 is like drop your head or lowering your head. And 头, of course, is head. And 思 can be either translated as thinking or missing. I think here, because it's followed by 故乡 or hometown, so miss is a better translation, so missing your hometown. So the couplet can be translated as looking up, I find the moon bright, dropping my head. In homesickness, I'm drowned. So about the translation, I find this translation on the internet I really like. So I adapted it for this video. So I need to explain that why I inserted the pronoun here, because it is not in the original text. You often find that in classical Chinese, the pronoun often is not present in the text. But here, it just makes perfect sense to insert the first person pronoun because of the physical movement, like lifting your head or raising your head looking up or lowering your head looking down, which make more sense if you insert the first person pronoun. That was the first thing I need to explain. The second thing I would like to explain is the connection between the round moon and homesickness. In ancient China, the Chinese believe that there is a correlation between human activity and the cosmic order. So the emperor, as the high priest responsible to align the human activity and the heavenly order, he needed to perform a set of ritual to achieve a harmonious relationship between the human world and the heaven. So sacrificing to the moon was one of them. Even today, you can see that there is still 4 temples in Beijing. The temple for heaven, 天坛, or the temple for earth, 地坛, the temple for the sun, 日坛, and the temple for the moon, that is 月坛. So in this temple, the emperor would perform his seasonal rituals. And because in the autumn is the season to sacrifice to the moon, the ritual will be performed in the moon temple. So by the Tang Dynasty, the full moon was already a symbol of family reunion. The court had made the 15th of lunar August as the moon festival. So the commoner also sort of follow the ritual. They would sacrifice to the moon and then celebrate the family reunion. So when a Chinese person see the full moon, not necessarily on the moon festival, just any month, he would miss his home if he's not with them. Now back to Li Bai. So Li Bai was born in 701, which was the most prosperous time of the Tang Dynasty. It was also the best time to be a poet, because this is the time when civil service examination was fully established as a way of recruiting scholar officials. And poetry was one subject tested in the civil service examination. If you could pass the civil service examination or obtain a recommendation from someone politically influential, you can secure a pretty good position for yourself in the bureaucratic ranks. Or if you want to obtain a recommendation, you would need to present your best poems and essays to a high-rank official or a member of the royal clan. This is called 干业. I might do a video on the role of poetry in politics of Imperial China in the future. But now I'm just going to focus on Li Bai. Of course, Li Bai wants to join the bureaucratic rank to realize his political ambition, but he was not eligible to sit in the civil examination because there was a ban on a group of people and their descendants up to 3 generations, including criminals, musicians, and dancers, and merchants. Unfortunately, Li Bai's father was a merchant. So the only way for Li Bai to join the bureaucratic system was to obtain a recommendation from someone politically influential. I have to say something about Li Bai's character. Li Bai was not your typical Confucian scholars who were, committed to Confucian norms and values, such as being humble about your talents and your background, etc. He travels to many places and presented countless poems and essays to high-rank officials. In these poems and essays, he almost seamlessly promoting himself and his literary talents and noble lineage, boasting that he was a distant relative of the royal family. He also socialized with the high-rank officials and the royal members, and he visited many Taoist monasteries and registered as a Taoist practitioner. This was probably because the royal family believed in Taoist religion, and many of the Taoist priests were personal friends of the emperor and other members of the royal family. So it takes 10 years or more than 10 years for Li Bai to build up his literary reputation, and finally got recommended by a well-known Taoist priest, a personal friend of the emperor, and the Princess Yuzhen, the emperor's favorite sister, in 742 AD. The emperor welcomed Li Bai personally into the palace and said he had heard of Li Bai's literary talent, was eager to meet him. Li Bai was soon appointed as academician in attendance at Imperial Academy or Hanlin Gongfeng. Li Bai enjoyed the relaxed life at the academy and many banquets held at the court, composing poems to be performed in those banquets. He also had lots of drinking parties with his friends. Li Bai's young friend Du Fu actually composed a poem describing these drinking parties in the title of A Ballad of the Eight Drinking Immortals, or 饮中八仙歌. I might make a video in the future to talk about this poem. Here is one of the poems Li Bai composed at one of the drinking party at the court, praising the beauty of the emperor's favorite concubine, Yang Yihuan. Let me read it. 云想衣裳花想容，春风拂槛露华浓。若非群玉山头见，会向瑶台月下逢。Let's look at the first couplet. 云想衣裳花想容. So 云 is cloud, 想 is recall, 衣 is the upper part of the clothes or the rope, 长 is the skirt or the long flowing skirt. And 花 is blossom, and 想 again is recall, and 容 is the beautiful face. 春 is spring, 风 is wind, and 拂 is like blow over or caress, as translated here. 涧 is the railings around the terrace, and 露 is dew, and 华 is the petal, and 浓, well, in modern Chinese it means thick, but here it's probably referring to the last flowers. So when you translate the couplets, it reads, clouds recall her robes, blossom her face. Spring wind carries the rail, dew-laden petal grow lush. What I need to explain here is how I read 长, that character. In modern Chinese, it's often read as 裳, like 衣裳, but here it should be read as 长 because it refers to flowing robe when, the beauty dance. Here's a picture of the clothes, people wear, especially the court ladies. You can see that there is a outer layer and there is an inner layer. So the outer layer is the yi, and the inner layer is the 长. So that's 衣长. The second couplet read, 若非群玉山头见，会向瑶台月下逢. So 若 is if, and 非 is not, and 群玉 is 群 is like a cluster of things, like when you say 人群, it's a group of people. 玉 is jade, so 群 is a cluster of jade, and 山 is mountain, and 头 is top. So 山头 is the mountain top. 见 is sea. 会向瑶台月下逢. 会 is translated as surely. 向 is at. 瑶 here is translated as jasper, kind of beautiful stone. And 台 is terrace. And 月 is moon. And 下 is beneath. And 逢 is meet. If you translate it, it would read, if you do not see her atop jade-clasped mountain, then surely you shall meet her at the jasper terrace beneath the moon. So I need to explain jade-cluster mountain, or 群玉山. This is one of the peaks in the Kunlun mountain that lead to the heaven where many immortals take their residence. Yao Tai also refers to the residence of the immortal queen, Xi Wangmu, who supposedly lived in the Kunlun mountain. So these two lines basically claim that Yang's beauty matches that of the goddess in the immortal world. So that's how beautiful she is. So there are two other poems composed at the same time at this one. So if you're interested, you can contact me. I can read the other two poems with you. There's a bit of a backstory of these three poems. According to the historical record of the Tang Dynasty, this is what happens. One day, someone presented the emperor some rare peony flowers. So the emperor wanted to hold a party at the inner quarter of the palace for his favorite concubine Yang Yihuan and himself to view the flowers. Of course, he also wanted to have songs and dances for the party, and he wanted to have new lyrics for the songs, so he sent for Li Bai. Li Bai, of course, was also at a drinking party with his friends. So when he was summoned, he was half drunk. So after he arrived at the court, he quickly wrote down the three pieces of the lyrics according to the tone of clear and even melody, or 清平调. So this is the backstory. So even though the emperor sort of liked the Li Bai's literary talent very much, he could compose a poem on demand. But he knew that Li Bai was not a competent official, so kind of treated him more like a clown than the advisor for state affairs, as Li Bai hoped. So Li Bai was quite disappointed and turned to drinking and poetry. On the other hand, Li Bai's literary talents accompanied with his arrogance and drunkenness soon sort of alienated those around the emperor, including the favorite concubine Yang Yihuan. So Li Bai sort of resigned the position after only 2 years. The reason for Li Bai to fail at the court was that he's not really your typical Confucian scholars and has no patience for the tedious rituals and norms at the court. And his flamboyant personality, his fondness of wine, and of course his passion for freedom make him a ill fit for the throat-cutting court politics. So the emperor gave Li Bai a huge sum of money as his retirement fund and sent him home. With the money, he was able to travel extensively. He visited many more Taoist monasteries and practiced Taoist religion and martial art. But he sort of still haven't completely gave up his political ambition. So when Anlushan rebellion erupted and the emperor fled the capital Chang'an in 756 AD, another opportunity presented itself to Li Bai. A prince called Li Lin invited Li Bai to join him to fight the rebel. So Li Bai was very happy and joined Prince Li Lin's force. What he did not realize was that Prince Li Lin also harbored a bigger ambition and was after the throne against the crown prince. Unfortunately, Prince Li Lin was defeated by the crown prince and was executed. Li Bai was implicated and sent to exile. So when the old emperor abdicated to the crown prince in 759, Li Bai was pardoned. So he continued his wandering until he joined a relative, Li Yangbing, and stayed with him until he died. There was quite a few legends around Li Bai's death. The most mythical one were he simply returned to the immortal world where he was banished. Another story reported that he was drunk on a boat one night and thought the moon had fallen into the water, and he drowned when he was trying to rescue the moon. What a suitable death for a poet. Perhaps the most reliable story was that he simply died from overdrinking. So this is the story of Li Bai. Next video, I'm going to talk about Li Bai's poem on a knight errant. The reason I'm doing a talk on Li Bai's poems on knight errant was that most people know that he was a great poet who likes wine and has great poetic talent, but it was less known that he was also a committed Taoist practitioner, and he's actually an accomplished martial art master. He even had a disciple who learned martial art from him. So I'm going to talk about one of his poems praising the courage of a warrior. So if you're interested, please join me for my next video. And if you like to read poetry or other classic Chinese texts on philosophy or traditional Chinese medicine, please contact me. I have my email listed below. And if you like the content of my video, please subscribe my channel. Otherwise, thanks for viewing my video. Hopefully I will see you in my next video. Thank you.